Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Rory. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I am so fired up to have you join us today. Why? Because my guests are going to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you in the servant's heart, in service, but also give you tips and resources to grow your business. How cool is that? It doesn't cost you anything. We dedicate this podcast to exploring the idea of the servant's heart. You implement that in your business and your life, not just business, and the impact and change you can make in the world. It is so cool. I get to do it every day, almost every day. It's the best feeling in the world. So we're going to help you get there. I want to thank my sponsor, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine joining a community of high-income entrepreneurs and business leaders who are developing and creating a thought leader platform to help impact the world and bring your business in and help your business grow, but also be part of that great impact. For more information, there'll be a link in the show notes, or you can reach out to me at any time. With that being said, impact. Career is a word that's talked about a lot, especially since COVID's passed. What's my next career? What am I going to do? My guest is going to talk all about that. I'm super excited to learn more. Scott, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Steve. I love your message.
Thank you. And going through your background, and you're in sports, you have a massive background in sports and audience. You can read in his bio when I put it in there. How has that helped you become a better career coach?
You know, there are clients I have that want to be in the sports industry or in the sports industry and want to grow. And I like that about it. But also just on a personal level, you know, it's a hobby for folks. It's something they're a fan of. And man, it's just ripe with metaphors. So you'll never get less metaphors from me because I can't stop.
What's one lesson you learned from a challenge that you had in your days working with sports and tech and all that you could bring to your clients and people today?
I think, you know, launching new products to me reminds me a lot of launching a new career chapter. And it comes with trial and experimentation and failure and rejection. But also, if you pay attention to the data and listen to that and adapt, you have a great chance of being successful.
A lot of people lose sight of data. It's funny. I'll just throw ads out there. They look pretty on Facebook, and yeah, we go on and on about that. But we want to definitely transition to today. What do you see that people are doing with careers that go, oh no, Steve, don't do that. Here's a little tip to do this.
Oh, okay. Like when do I slap them on the hand a little bit?
Yes.
I try not to. I try
Yeah.
not to. You know, the job of a coach is to be a partner in the process, to help folks realize what it is they might want to do. But maybe, you know, talking about data, asking what trends have you seen in your process so far? What's working? And how might you do more of that? So there's definitely something there. If they're about to step on a landmine, you know, there's definitely resume type support that I can help with. The way these ATS machines work now in terms of resume submission, you know, that's one where it's objective information. The resume has to be able to be legible by the computer first in order to get to a human reviewer. So there's some stuff like that, you know, maybe some tough levels sneak in.
Yeah, and I like that because the coach, because you mentioned the word partner before, and I want to dive into that because as a coach, I could tell you're a really good coach. You get successful, but as for me as the client, let's say I'm your client, we have to be your partner, meaning, hey, Steve, here's some steps to take in 2 weeks when we meet. Please do these steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
How important is that?
And this is, a lot of that came from my management experience. I had multi-level matrix management over many years, and you learn some stuff the hard way. And a lot of times it's almost like that agency client relationship where if they think it's their idea, they're more likely to follow through. And so some of that goes with the process of asking good questions, creating some reflection, maybe some stuff they didn't even see in themselves, or find a way to articulate that they hadn't previously. That's what happens when I go to my coach. And that's a two-person game.
You scored big time with me by that little phrase. I went to my coach. Arnie, did you hear that? Coaches have coaches.
Oh, yeah.
Bill Belichick had a coach. Let's use one of the best coaches, Bill Walsh, in my area. They had coaches themselves, or mentors they had. So thank you for sharing that. But talk about the mentorship, how important that is.
Yeah, I'm so thankful. For me, it's just a few years old in terms of this chapter of my career. I feel good about my progress, but I also know there's people that have been doing it longer or have even better innate skills than I do. And my coach was one of my trainers during my certification process. And she adapts to where I am at the time. She helps me identify something valuable to tackle that given month, and then is able to guide me through a process to develop my own action plan to go after that challenge. So to me, that is a bit like mentorship. It's the coaching is similar. It's a bit like management. There's a blend between some of those, but also it's helpful to maybe change hats from time to time. So we'll always carve off a few minutes at the end where she can take her coach hat off and put her coaching expert hat on, and maybe provide me with some resources that she knows have been helpful in her career that can help me run my business better.
Yeah, see, that's the thing people don't realize. Warren Buffett had coaches. Bill Gates, I'm not being political, just Mark Cuban talks about all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody successful did not have a mentor, coach, whatever.
Yeah, humility is pretty important, Steve, don't you think?
Yes. Thank you. That's a word I was going to talk about. Let's jump on humility. That's a great question.
Yeah, I always say I was blessed to be a jack of all trades, master of none when I was a manager, because it was so obvious that, the functional folks I had around me were better at what they were doing than I ever would be. And that makes hiring easier. That makes motivation easier. It makes shared ownership better, which creates, that productivity from your staff where they really believe in themselves. They've been given some autonomy, but also the air cover if they need it. And that way I can focus on the psychological side of management, buffering from upper management, change management, and influence. Like those sorts of things became things I really gravitated towards because I wasn't great at any particular functional thing. So I was blessed with not only that diversity of skills, but the wisdom to know it and surround myself with people that I could, get things rolling and let them go.
I love that so much, Scott, because it reminds me of all the mentors I've talked to, very successful people. What you don't know, you don't know. So know it. They yell at me, know it. Exactly the way you're talking about. Let's talk about listening. We talked about before the show, and I told you my principle. How important questions and listening. That's a combo you have to do. Talk about that when it comes to careers.
Yeah, beautiful. I only realized this in retrospect, but I was first trained in journalism. I was in sports TV production. Later in my career, I ran a research department, and so we were always asking questions. And then as a coach, I realized it was so natural for me to be on the question side of things, because if you ask the right question in the right way at the right time, it can create knowledge, and that opens the door to somebody having that epiphany or that breakthrough moment. And also, if one of your questions is, what do you think we should do? Now you're sharing that ownership again. And so anything like that, whether it's an employee or a coaching client, I think feels like empowerment. And to me, that's the long-term success story. I don't want to be a crutch for anybody. And that's all advice will really get you. And so I really lean towards what is going to help this person help themselves long-term.
I've got a great question for you. I get asked once in a while. I haven't really got a great answer, but can you ask the wrong question?
Yeah, I think I do sometimes. And only because I have these mental cycles I go through after sessions. Could be overnight, could be the next day. It's like, oh man, if I had just asked it slightly different. There are better questions. There are amazing questions out there. And to me, that's some of the fun of getting better at this and knowing how and when to use the right question. Because you see it, and believe me, like seeing that light bulb above your client's head, that is, man, that's a feeling that I want to keep going back for.
Okay, you asked me to challenge you before the show, and this won't be a challenge for you. So, audience, so is asking the wrong question worse off than asking no question at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be something that's too sensitive at the time and takes you steps backward. If the alternative is silence, believe it or not, waiting an extra 4 or 5 beats can be super powerful because the client might try to fill that space and a new thought might come to them from their subconscious somewhere. So I actually think silence versus wrong question.
He nailed it, because we're going to go full circle listening. That's why listening is so important. Questions are important, but because a lot of people ask the question, go, how old are you? I'm 32. Hey, by the way, I've got this coaching program you need to buy. Well, wait a minute. Well, where are you going with your questions?
Totally.
Right?
It really is a lot like interviewing. If you look at, who speaks the most in a given setting or an interview, it better be the guest. It better be the client. They don't pay to hear what I have to say. I think they need to get some stuff out. I can document it, but at the end of the day, they need to hear themselves and gain that confidence to move forward.
I got to bring you as a guest to my podcast mentoring. I tell them all the time it's talk less.
Mm-hmm.
So ROI is in business, it's the elephant, that's the bottom line. I got a business, you're helping me. If I'm not making money, or, there's no ROI. How do we measure that in coaching with your sessions, especially?
Yeah, super personal. It goes with anybody that is running a business. What your goals are your goals. Nobody else gets to define your success. And so when I have a client, it's the first thing we talk about. What is your goal for this session? What's your goal for this partnership? What's your goal for the macro arc of how we're going to work together? So we can then measure that along the way. And I'll just give you a few. One of them is clarity, right? I'm lost, I'm stuck. Well, if you don't want to feel that way, how do you want to feel? And a lot of times it comes back to clarity, because the two big questions in coaching, especially for career, are what do you want and how will you get it? And you got to do the first one first. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time and exploration, but that's where we spend some time so that once you have that clarity, whether it's with me or on your own, now you can go 100 miles per hour in a direction you believe in.
Audience, this guy's super smart, because think about how he answered it. He didn't say, Steve Ramona, you need to make 100 million next year. He didn't put a number. It's not a sports scoreboard. We use a sports analogy. Clarity. That can be determined by you, and it could be my clarity is different than Joe Smith, than Debbie. I love that, because we get so caught up in numbers.
Yeah.
We got to be careful with that. Yeah, we got to make money, and but that's a whole different black hole we won't go down today.
Sure. Yeah.
I believe
it can be. I mean, I'm open to any goal my client has. We just have to agree on it and manage it within the scope of time we have together.
Right. And if you don't hit that $1 million goal and you hit 900,000, you're still successful.
Yeah. And even at the end of sessions or the end of partnerships, I will ask, what is it that you gain from this? What insight do you now have that you didn't before? What process did we go through that you think unlocked something valuable for you going into the future?
So I love really good coaches like you, because you're asking that question to have me answer. It's not the coaches, but diving into it. So powerful, so powerful. 100%. I want to talk a little. You've been in sports. I noticed your background, NFL, NASCAR, and you're vice president of Turner Sports, and cool stuff. I'm very envious, by the way. But I believe sports and business crossover. A sports analogy fits in a business analogy. Do you have any that really help with people with their business?
Yeah, I'll reflect on something recent because I'm writing about it for my next client newsletter. Is Rory McIlroy's victory last weekend, and the word that came to mind for me was resilience. It's not, I don't want to mistake sports for somebody going through like significant trauma and overcoming that. But if you saw the emotion that poured out of him in his speech afterwards and how he talked to his daughter and what it meant to tell her, believe in your dreams, keep working hard, you can make anything happen. So I think resilience is such a sports thing. I saw this stat recently from Roger Federer. He made a commencement speech last year. And the trivia question is, what percentage of total points did he win in his career? And the answer is 55%. One of the
Wow.
2 or 3 most dominant tennis players of all times. He only won 55% of his total points, but I guess they were the right ones.
Yeah. You don't have to win the whole time. That I like that, because even at 52%, I trade, and you're 50% winning, you're still making money. So,
100%. And people going through challenges and getting rejected and all that stuff. Like I like the baseball metaphors for that. You hit 3 out of 10, you're in the Hall of Fame. Look at how many errors Chipper Jones had, or how many walks a certain pitcher gave up. It's failure constantly. And it's really about how you react to that. And sports to me is one of those motivators of, that happens, dust yourself off and take another shot.
Yeah, I just realized, God, I love having great guests like you teaching me. Sports is handling failure across the board, from golf,
So
baseball,
much.
because they're going to
Constantly.
fail. Yeah, that's very cool. You have something I found. I don't know if you follow these 4 stages of career transition. What are those, and what are they about?
Yeah, thanks. That came out of my book I published last year. It was on literally on my 50th birthday. I published Exploring the Midlife Career Crisis, that goes through my own career transformation from sports executive to career coach. And I dissected it backwards, my own process of how I made that transition. And I came up with 4 stages that I use in my coaching practice. The first one is realize, that light bulb that it's time for a change. It could be voluntary, it could be involuntary change. Then you're exploring. What is it I might want to do? What are my strengths and interests? Once you have a hypothesis there, you move into articulation. Now you can talk about your strengths towards a particular goal, a role that you might want to accomplish. Then activate. You're going to market, you're getting the data back, and you can feed that into the cycle of the 4 stages.
That's very cool. Say those say the 4 again.
Sure thing. Realize, explore, articulate, and activate.
I like that. Simple. Some of these things can be very complicated. People are like,
It is. And when people are in stress mode, what happens is they all come together, and people are trying to do them all at the same time. But for example, separating explore from articulate, the first thing when somebody's laid off, they often send me a resume. Look at my resume. I literally will not look at your resume until you tell me what job you're applying for. As any good marketer knows, how do you create a proper brand message if you don't know your audience? And so backing up to that first question of coaching, what do you want? Some people need to move faster than others because it's an urgent situation. Some people have time to take a step back. And when you do that, especially in the midlife crisis mode, maybe you want to do something more purpose-oriented, more passion-oriented, not that career your parents talked you into, just something that you now have an affinity for. So explore can be super valuable if you have time for it.
Yeah, and everybody has a different path. In this world nowadays of social media, everybody's telling us what to do. Follow your own path. Get somebody like Scott to help you with that path. Because I think too many people are in careers they do really want to be. And it's unfortunate. I feel for those people. Hopefully they run into you. That's the goal. Get them to run into you.
There's a lot of great coaches out there. And
yes.
And I have to acknowledge that. Thanks for saying that.
And I agree with you. And it's so cool. One thing I've been asked too is, and we're coming to the end here, can you transition too much in your careers? Like, can you have too many jobs?
Oh, that's an awesome question. You see a lot of that with the younger folks. A lot of bouncing. I started to get a little more comfortable with it as I saw it because it's just happening. And it's happening because they change their minds, or it's happening because they want to get a promotion. To me, you have to come from a place of respect first. The trend is happening. So then what is it as a manager you can do to earn their loyalty if you want them to stick around? So that's in a management sense. But as a career coach, I don't think I'm in a position to tell them not to, but maybe have a discussion about the implications. And maybe it's when they realize it, they're not necessarily getting traction on an interview path that they're on, or they're not getting interviews for the resume they're putting out. Maybe they come to their own realization at that point. And then we have to decide, okay, what can you do about that? Or is there a way to tell the story? Is there a way to present that information so that that rebuttal goes away and you have a chance to explain yourself in an interview?
Yeah, and your resume is a story. I love that. I just realized that's so cool. Your resume should tell your story, and it changes. And I would think as we get to the end here, different inside a business. So I work for Google. I started as an admin, and now I transition up is different than me starting as a health agent, insurance agent, and then I go into plumbing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very,
right.
very cool. Real quick, I know we're coming to the end, but I got to find out. Tell me a success story of somebody you work with.
I'll go on the clarity side because we talked about that earlier. A friend of mine who became a client, I've known him for a while. We used to be colleagues. Really just wasn't sure what he wanted to do next. He was very frustrated with his current role. He'd gotten to, that 3-year point tends to be something for people, and wasn't really in love with his relationship with his boss, but didn't know what to do next. So we went through an exploration process, and I'll mention one foundational exercise, Ikigai, Ikigai, if people look that up, or we can link to it. That's an exercise that helps people get out of their head, look at the intersection of strengths, interests, demand, and what the world needs. And going through that exercise for him, it was almost like working with John Nash. Like he had a diagram and post-it notes, and somehow was able to sort through all that to see a trend. And then he got excited, and then he started researching, and he got more excited. Then he picked out the thing he was going to go after. And once he did that, all of his energy went in that direction. And within a couple of months, he had his dream job. And I'll never be happier for somebody when they get to that stage.
And all you do is point in directions. It's so cool what you did. You didn't tell them what to do. You didn't force them anywhere. It's here, let's just move the train. Okay, there. You make it sound simple. I know it's not simple always, but I appreciate that story because anybody can do it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And sometimes it does take help. And that's important as part of this, whether it's a coach, a mentor, an advisor, a friend, a family member. Our brain is sort of funky. And I love the neuroscience and the psychology of coaching, because there's some things your brain won't let you see. There's some questions your brain won't let you ask yourself. And so bouncing stuff around, or maybe even journaling, I think is the next best thing. Get some of your thoughts out, talk to somebody you trust that won't judge you. And that can really lead to these light bulbs that can be life-changing.
I'm laughing because your brain is funky. That's sports.
Yeah.
You know better. I've worked with athletes.
Oh, yeah.
Athletes, they can be so funky. And
when somebody gets in the zone,
oh,
how about that?
Crazy. It's
and
crazy
that can happen in coaching sessions. You just sort of get in a groove. I'm doing 90-minute sessions with some people, and sometimes you just get in a groove and it flows, and you just sort of get that momentum and go.
And here's the power of coaching. The ROI is magical. If you pay $10,000 for somebody and they got you $1 million job, raise your hand. I do that all day.
Yeah. What's it worth to have that clarity?
Yeah. God, I love that word. I'm glad you brought it back. Let's end with a fun question. You're a great guy, so you're going to love this. So I've reserved a table in a restaurant for you, table of 4. Okay. You obviously can sit in one of the chairs. So in 3 empty chairs, who would you invite, whether dead or alive? And what food would you order?
I'm going family, Steve. I don't mean to get emotional on you, but when I think about that, there's a grandfather I never met my mother's father that died when she was 5, and then my mom's stepfather, and then my father's father. So the 3 grandfathers. That's it, man.
I'd love to hear them talk. Imagine what they got to say would be fabulous. What would
Yeah,
we
think about that generation and what they went through. They're all part of the war efforts and a different time that we should all respect.
Amen. What food would we order?
I'm thinking pizza. I can't go wrong with pizza. It's my favorite. It's my flaw. I'll never get tired of it.
He's being very humble. He knew it. Pizza's his flaw. It's a good flaw. It's mine as well. Real quick question. You've been in the sports field for a long time. Tell us a sports figure that you worked with was just so incredible as a person.
Yeah, one of the people I quote a few times in the book was a sideline reporter. Very colorful, wore paisley jackets on the side of NBA games. His name was Craig Sager. And Craig went through a tough battle with cancer, and along the way won the Jimmy V Perseverance Award at the ESPY Awards. And he gave a speech that really resonated for me. And really at the end, he says, "Time is simply how you live your life."
I loved Craig Sager. So you hit me hard here because he died way too young. As we all know, he was just, that's really cool. Didn't expect that answer. That's great. So a couple of things. How can people reach out to you and connect with you?
I live on LinkedIn, or they can hit doyneservices.com.
Perfect. Book, where can they get it? Name of the book again so people can grab it.
Yep. It's on Amazon, Kindle, and paperback, Exploring the Midlife Career Crisis.
Great. And then where can they get a check from you? Where do you send the check? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'll send you the check. He's not that good. He's not that crazy. We'll just use that word.
Fair.
Scott, thank you so much. You blessed my audience. It was so cool. It flew by and time flew by. I'd love to ask, can I bring you up for part 2 in a few months?
Absolutely.
Oh, let's do that. Okay. Audience, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Here's a perfect example. What Scott just talked about, and you're listening and go, my friend's trying to make a career change. Okay, send them the link. And if they like it, not everybody's going to like the show. And me and Scott want to just impact the people that impact. But the impacts them, imagine this journey. They reach out to Scott. Either Scott helps them, becomes their client, whatever, and they get a job. See, people don't think of podcasts this way. I do. It's a gift, that link, because you can really, as I said at the beginning, impact and change people's lives. So let's go out and do that. Share this out, subscribe, because then you get the links and you can find the ones you want to share with. With that being said, me and Scott want to thank everybody for watching and listening to this podcast. We'll see you all in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.